Thank you so
Okay.
much for doing this.
Well, and for the rest of you, as if you have questions, you can unmute yourself and speak up, and then as you do, we can ask you to identify yourself a little bit. But we're going to get started, and we're talking today about developing outcome scales, and this is just part of the big framework of performance management that we're engaged in when we think about results-oriented management and accountability. We think about Roma. It's this we have a grounding in a results orientation, and that's sometimes hard for people to get a handle on because they want to talk about the services they provide, and then they need to figure out, well, how does that fit into this whole system? So Roma is a system that starts with assessing the needs of the community, turning those needs into action through planning with the strategic plan, the agency's strategic plan, the agency's community action plan that goes to the state office. And then you can't just plan, you have to implement those services and do a good job, quality job of implementing your services and strategies. And while you're doing that, you're gathering data, to document the achievement of your results. So you're observing and reporting. And then that's not the end. You want to evaluate your data and figure out how you can use that data going forward to assessing the new set of needs that you've identified. So in just that brief overview, I've given you a foundational principles of Roma. So when people tell you Roma is so difficult and so complicated, you say, well, really, we could explain it in just a minute or two by thinking about this fact that it's a cycle of activities that are all focused on talking about the results and the impact that we have. So today we're going to define an outcome scale. We're going to practice constructing a simple scale. We're going to talk about a set of steps for people to construction a scale. So those of you who already have scales, maybe we can help you think about those steps as a way to modify and refine your scales so that they're better for you. They're providing better data for you, and then think about, and not only just a scale, a single scale, but how combining scales together into a matrix can provide more useful information. Why is this piece important? Why was this pulled out for you today? And the answer is that when we think about reporting, uh, it seems that agencies are not as do not have the problem with thinking about the number of people they served or the number of services they provided. But the problem is identifying what changed in the world because of the work that the agencies have done. And often that's difficult to track and to measure. Um, Part of that reason is that change often takes time, and it's incremental. A little step here and a little step there eventually produces a change. But if you're only going to capture the final change, then you're going to miss out on a lot of the outcomes that are achieved by your customers. And you're going to miss out on a lot of the opportunities for celebrating success. So we don't necessarily know what it costs to do this work, and what the number of services, what's the set of services that's most useful to produce a particular outcome. So if we have a scale, we'll understand that we can connect those pieces, those benchmarks of that scale to services. We could track it to the cost of those services, the time for those services, and we can follow that as the customer transitions over time, and that can not having a system to do all that really makes it difficult to be able to track your progress. So we're thinking that the data that you need for all that comes from a lot of different places. So you might have different program software that's required by a funding source, and you might have fiscal data. You might have human services or human resource data in your human resource office. So a lot of times there's data in many different places, and what can happen is that those various program data elements can be brought together so that we can see a full picture of what's changing for the customer. And a way to do that, to move from a fragmented system, can be to use scales. So it can focus on those incremental changes over time and help us think of how to get progress towards um, the outcome. So we like to say this is the thing that we say about scales. It's that an outcome scale is a continuum that describes different states or conditions of status, and it's used to identify and measure incremental change in families, agencies, and communities. And this has been my favorite way to talk about scales for a long time. But just recently, I saw this and I thought, well, this might be easier to think about. It's a hierarchy of logically related changes. So when we think about what a scale is, it is logically related changes ordered in a way that makes it logical to see progress from one step to another. And so here's a very simple scale. It's a gas gauge, and it has an E and it has an F. And even though there aren't specific numbers throughout this gauge, we could tell by looking that this person is at what we would say a quarter tank of gas. So we have a bit of an understanding about the well-being status of the person who has this gas gauge. So it's something that, and even if you're digital now, and it might not look quite like this, your vehicles will have some way of saying what the status is of the fuel that runs your vehicle. And so uh, in every vehicle it could be different. So a quarter of a tank in my car, my little Ford Focus wagon, the quarter tank there, I only have an 11-gallon tank altogether. So a quarter of a tank is different than my friend that has a big truck and has a 35-gallon tank. So a quarter of a tank might not be the same amount of gas, and it might not even represent the same amount of distance, but we understand the relationship between that E and that F. And so we're going to relate that to the monitoring and assessment task force scale. Now, this was created back in prehistory, right? In the 90s, when we first started making a big push to understand performance management. So this was a group of people representing local agencies, state offices, federal staff, associations, and they all got together to think about, well, how would we talk about well-being over time? So they created this 5-point scale: in crisis, vulnerable, stable, safe, and thriving. And if you think about them matching up with a gas gauge, you can see that in crisis would be empty and thriving would be full. And then we have various ways along the way to show the status of a person or a project or a process over time. So let's try to make these things a little bit more concrete. Let me ask you this question, and you could put your answer in your chat. That would probably be helpful. Um, Let me go back to that first one. if you look at just the gas gauge areas, when do you stop typically to put gas in your car? When you're at three-quarters of a tank, half a tank, a quarter of a tank, or do you wait till the little light comes on and you're nearly on empty? When do you intervene and when do you put gas in your car? Go ahead and put a little answer in the chat. Let's see what people are saying. When the red light comes on. Yeah. Okay. 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 All right. Okay. So, we look at the gas gauge, or we check on it as we go through our trips, and we do that because it changes as we use it. And one of the things that's important to know when you're using a scale, you have to check in with it periodically to see what the changes are, and then you would want to maybe qualify some of the time that you have. So um, when do we intervene in a situation? So a lot of people, you're intervening either between a quarter of a tank or a half a tank, and I mean you might actually put gas in your car. Jennifer says it's hurricane country, so I want to be sure that I've got the gas to go. So you might top up your gas tank more frequently. And if you're going to get on an interstate highway where there's limited access to gas stations, you might also top it up because you don't know when you're going to be able to stop again. If it's really you don't have snowy weather, but here in Pennsylvania, if we know there's a snowstorm coming, we all go out and fill up our tanks because we want to make sure we have enough gas if we need to, in case we can't get out to the station. So there's all these reasons why you might intervene at different times. And I think that knowing that and understanding that helps you understand this concept of how to use a scale. So part of the identification of the scale, the crisis to thriving scale, is to identify this prevention line. And you'll see that our prevention line is right there where many of you said you stopped to get gas. So between a quarter and a half tank, that area is where we like to be intervening with people, where we want to help folks that may be vulnerable. We'd like to help them if they're still stable before they get to be vulnerable, but we really want to try to help people before they're in crisis. And why is that? Well, that's because we don't want to wait until the last minute when somebody's in a crisis. If we run out of gas, if you wait till that red light comes on and for some reason your gas station that you usually go to is closed for the day and you break down or you run out of gas, it's going to be more costly and more difficult for you to deal with that situation. And that's true with our customers. When they fall into crisis, it's harder to help get them back up into the vulnerable or even up above the prevention line into stable. So we want to be always thinking about setting up expectations for when we're going to intervene. And just a couple of things that I'd say about using a scale. Using a scale can help you identify the individual that's coming, the customer goals. In identifying their situation, being able to say, here's where I am on a particular scale. This is a description of my status. Is it stable? Is it vulnerable. Not that they would use that language, but they would use the words that are in the scales, which we're going to get to in a minute. But by looking at that, they can actually help to identify goals, their own goals. And it's always important if you're people centered to make sure that they understand their goals. And we talked about this, that it is a way to measure progress of any kind. Any little bit of progress can be measured and documented using a scale. And with the idea that we're keeping our eye on something, a set of information that causes us to be able to identify change. So let's see, you can have all kinds of scales. So here's a really simple one. If I was to show you this and say, how are you feeling today? And you just point to one of these, it would be an easy way for me to check in with you. And get you to all, I could get you to all do that to say, how are you feeling on this day in August? And that would help me, but it's not going to give me the kind of useful information that having a scale is going to give us. So we're going to develop a housing scale here. And let me try to not turn the off. Let me pull up this. And I'm going to need you to participate, I guess, using the chat, or you can unmute for sure. You can definitely unmute. But I've got this, and I'm hoping that you can see it, hoping that you're able to see my screen. Are we pretty clear here on the screen? We can see it. Get some
Yes.
nods from folks. Okay, I'm going to ask you to give me some conditions of housing, and this is just a brainstorm. So we're not trying to identify the status, whether it's in crisis or thriving. We're just saying what kinds of housing conditions do people have in your community? So let's give me some ideas. Like what might be the worst case scenario? Maybe if I could get Aurora. Aurora, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here. Reading the chat, we have unsheltered individuals or people facing eviction, so possibly losing their house. Um,
Okay, unsheltered and then facing evictions. Okay, all right.
we also have lack of basic utilities.
Okay, so housing, um, could we say that's unsafe?
Unsafe would work.
Okay, no utilities, no basic utilities. Okay, utilities. Okay. Does anybody have any good ideas? People that live in good places?
We have a high rent. That's usually a
High,
good
high,
place.
okay, oh, a high rent. So is it unaffordable? Is it what the person who said that one is a high rental unit meaning um,
Unaffordable.
unaffordable? Does that mean that's unaffordable? Not affordable. Okay. So what about high rent and you can afford it? That would mean it might be a nice place, right? Um,
So we have maybe like stable housing.
So we need to say what that means, Lisa. What kind of is it rental housing? Are you renting that you can afford? Now, Robin, we just want to see housing situations that people live in. We're not looking at the community level needs at this point. So just think about where do people live? What kind of things? So we've got some renting that you can afford and renting that you can't afford.
What about owning?
What about owning? Okay, home ownership. And maybe that comes with some qualifiers too. Home ownership with an affordable mortgage.
Mhm.
And then how about home ownership without? It's unaffordable. It's an unaffordable mortgage.
Hmm.
What else? What are some other ways that people live these days? Dennis, when you say room and board, does that mean you think that someone's living with someone else?
Oh, like roommates
Yeah.
that fall into the rent situation. Low income housing.
Okay, let's say living with another person. Okay. Multiple living, multiple families living together. Are you thinking of generational? Is that what you're thinking?
That's what it sounds like to me.
Huh? Uh-huh. All right. So, Rob, if you've got housing assistance needed, then that might be unaffordable, which we have. Uh, how about subsidized housing? So we have safe, subsidized, as a HUD voucher of some kind. HUD, sorry. Um, do you have public housing in your areas? Do you have like housing projects? Do you have those? Do people live there?
In
And
the
how,
comments, someone said like a senior housing, like a senior facility.
okay,
Maybe that's
good,
in that same realm of a complex that multiple people would probably live in.
okay, that's good. All right, let's see. Let's see, debt-free housing. That might be home ownership, affordable mortgage, or let's say, or paid up. How about that? Or paid up mortgage. That would be debt-free housing, maybe.
Hmm.
Yvette, does that make sense? Does that sound like what you've got?
Yes.
Okay, so Elaine is saying household has a secure place to live and is not at imminent risk of eviction. So, uh, is it is it rental housing? Is it owned housing? Do they live with another person? Do they live with their family?
Oh,
Um,
couldn't that be both?
it could be, but I'd like to have a description of it to write down. We could write two of them down. We could write anything down, but just to say they have a secure place to live doesn't give us enough to understand. That could be anything. It could be any of these that we listed. Well, maybe not, but it could be a lot of them. And that's what we're going to do next is we're going to say which of these are secure. So I'm asking just what kinds of situations do you see that you might call secure?
Yeah, I mean, immediately I would think of rent because that's who we
Okay,
help the most.
okay. And is it renting that they afford?
It could be renting that they afford and um, they're comfortable with that, payment.
Okay, all right. They can afford. Okay. And what about renting in a neighborhood that they like? That's safe? Do you ever have a problem with the neighborhood that people rent in? Does that have anything to do with the security?
Oh, like a gated community.
Oh, okay. Let's put that in.
Um,
Renting. Go ahead.
Also, in the comments, we have a temporary shelter. So maybe if someone's staying in like a motel or somewhere where they're only staying for a couple of days or a week.
Okay. And what about emergency, like 90 day or 30-day shelters? Do you have those?
Mm-hmm.
And I know sometimes we could say including domestic violence shelters.
Or women's shelters.
Okay. Okay. Well, this gives us enough for us to talk about, to think about. Oh, transitional housing. You've got
That's a
how
good.
long is your transitional housing usually?
I think it can vary depending
Like
on.
maybe up to 2 years in some places. Is that
Yes, exactly. Up to 2 years, and some is that 30, 90 day.
okay? Okay. All right. So make this distinction that these emergencies is uh, between 30 to 90 days so that we get a sense. because what we want to do is we want to have a pretty clear description of what these things look like, because now what we're going to do is we're going to put them over to our scale. We're going to move them over to our scale. And now we're going to see what kind of status they might have. So when we think about, Robin, when you said stable housing, now we're going to think which ones of these, this list, would we call stable? So let's take this first one, unsheltered. Where might that one go on our list?
I would say crisis.
Crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's hear from folks if we can, if you can speak up. We're going to put that there. Does everybody agree? And if we're putting it someplace and you say, I don't think it goes there, just say, because that's part of this process, just to demonstrate. It may not be easy. That one might be easy. Unsheltered is in crisis. But as we go forward, some of these, is it stable? Is it safe? Is it thriving? We might have to have some discussion too. So, Elaine, where do we want to put this unsafe housing?
I am so sorry about that. I didn't mean to cross a line through it. I was
Well, that's okay, because we can move it. Where we're going to move it to? Unsafe housing, no basic utilities. Which one of the places do we want to put it?
I would still put it under like crisis,
Right.
vulnerable. Yeah.
I think so. I think that's right. I think that's good. How about facing eviction? Where would that go?
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
Okay. All right. I think so. I think that's good. All right. Um, and what about high rent that's not affordable?
That's crisis.
Is it crisis?
Or
I think that's
vulnerability.
vulnerable.
I would think vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable? Okay. How many people say how many people say stable? Let's see. If you put your hands up, maybe we can see you. Or you could put it in the chat, stable or safe, and we'll take a check. We're going to vote, because that's what we might do because we have to come to consensus somehow. So one way we can do that is to vote. So who thinks that unaffordable high rent is vulnerable, and who says it's stable? Because if those are our two.
We do have some disagreement in the chat already. We have one vulnerable. Oh, a couple more vulnerables. We have a couple stables.
Okay. Anybody in crisis?
No, I think vulnerable might take the lead on this one.
Okay, all right, let's put it over there. And in real life, we would have to have a whole lot more discussion about this, but for the purposes of this example, we're just going to see that some consensus has to be achieved in order for us to have a list, a description. So how about renting you can afford?
Safe.
Thriving.
Safe.
Safe.
I say safe.
Safe.
Okay, more safe than thriving, because it could be thriving, right? Oops, sorry. Oh, I'll get it. Let me get it back. Oh, come over here, guys. Okay. All right. There we go. Okay, renting you can afford is safe. Have to put safe back in. All right. It just moved itself over. There we go. Okay. What about home ownership, affordable mortgage or paid up mortgage? Where does that go?
Thrive in this economy. Thriving.
Yeah, there's so few of us that are able to do that, right? It's just like, how about renting in a gated community?
Thriving.
Thriving.
Okay.
Safe for sure.
And we might think of that gated community thing as kind of a
Safe as well.
yeah, it could be that we're why does it doesn't want to go there. It could be almost like a proxy for renting somewhere you want to be.
Mhm.
So if you're renting somewhere and that's where you want to be and you can afford it and it's the right size and everything's good, that would be thriving. You don't have to own your home in order to be thriving because, a lot of people don't choose to own. So, and what about if it's unaffordable in its home ownership? Where does that go?
I do think that that's on the verge of being vulnerable in my eyes, because if you can't afford the mortgage, all it takes is one big emergency to happen, and suddenly the emergency fund is gone, the house is struggling, and I think it puts you in a vulnerable spot.
And isn't it the same as the renting? It's not affordable. I mean, I think it's about the same. You do have some equity in the home ownership, but you might also have lots of problems in the home that would be against it. So, some liabilities. So, it's very similar. So, a lot of times we think if they own it, that's the gold standard, but not if it can't be affordable. Let's just do this idea of living with other people. We got a couple. Well, let's do senior housing complex. Where would that go? A senior housing complex.
I think stable.
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 Stable. Okay. And why not safe? Why don't we want to put it in safe? Hmm.
If it's affordable, it could be like affordable and not safe.
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
mean, you could have quite a few additions and you're just there because of the affordability, but it's not really
Okay.
valuable but dependable.
So maybe a senior housing complex of choice might be
Mhm.
something that you would say. A place that you like, your family can come and you've got your own space. And you don't have to do all the maintenance, and sounded really good to me as a senior. So,
In the chat, Vince makes a good point. He says that a senior housing complex can be considered safe, especially because there are independent senior livings. So they
yes,
chose to live there,
yes,
they're
yes,
really
yes.
independent.
Yep, yep. And that's really true about living with families as well, is that and sometimes it's by choice. Families and multiple families live together so they can support each other, and that might be safe. It might even be thriving, but often a lot of times we think of, oh, they're living together, multiple families, and it's a hardship on them, and it's vulnerable. But it really depends on the circumstance. And think back to what we talked about with the gas gauge. It matters what your situation is. It matters if you're able. If you know that there's a crisis coming and you have to fill your tank up, or if you're going to be going a long way, or if you live around the corner from a gas station, you could let that red light come on all the time because you could always pop over and grab it. So it's the same with the housing situations. You have to understand the different kinds of situations because it could be different for different families. This is from the Introduction to Roma, and this is the Introduction to Roma participant manual. Um, and this is a page from the manual. And on this one, you see a housing scale that's a little different from the one that we developed because we looked at um, uh, this idea of choice. That it's non-subsidized. People are able to afford it on their own, and it's their housing of choice. And it could be either home ownership or it could be rental. When you get down into this limited choice, it's still not subsidized. You don't need any. You can still afford it, but you have limited choices, and because of your income, and it could either be ownership or rental. And then again, when we get into subsidized, some of these subsidized areas are long term, so that transitional housing might be stable because you have, and that's what Section 8 could be too. where you have that over time. You have a 2 year period, or you have quite a few years if you have Section 8 housing. Um, or it could be permanent how a living arrangement. So these are all limited choice that are subsidized. And then we get down to the bottom where we're looking at temporary or at risk of losing, and that gets us down in the vulnerable category. And then this transitional housing, you see, it says 30 to 60 days. So it's not the long-term one that we talked about. Can't get my little pointer to work here, but oops. Uh, and then, of course, the bottom one that's in crisis, where it's not safe. There's no housing. It's imminent loss. So, does this one that's more fleshed out make sense to you? Do you have questions about that, or can you see how this could be? This is where we would have headed, but that little activity is just to get you thinking. But if you're thinking about starting to do a scale of some kind, using housing is a good way to do it, because everybody understands that people have to live somewhere. I mean, it's not complicated in that sense. And then you can see all of the complicated description elements in the in something like this. A couple things about this that I want to point out are that there are numbers on the left. For some reason, my pointer is not working, guys. I would normally be pointing to think, oh, here it is. Um, now it's working, but so you see these numbers here. So they're scored. And this can help you if you want to aggregate your data from several people in a housing program. Where did they come in? They came in with an average score of 3 or 4, meaning they were just below the prevention line. So they needed immediate help, or that they were secure, they were safe, but they needed some subsidy. So that's what those numbers would mean. So you can see that uh, the numbers are arrayed by the benchmarks here off to the side, and then there are letters as well. And these letters are a way to help you show that things might be the same kind of severity, um, uh, generally. So they're in crisis, but you can distinguish between different. So up to 30-day shelter and notice of a mortgage foreclosure that you might have 30 days for, or eviction that you might have 30 days. These are all very short term. So they're all scored at a 2, but they also have a descriptor A, B, and C. So you can distinguish between them as you're trying to gather your data from your scale. And that's the same. Up here you have 3 of them that are scored as a 6 and one that's scored as a 5, so that that gives you a way to quantify the information. And as you start to look at scales, you'll be able to think of these things, how to score them, and we might come back and work some more after you start. But what you want to do with a scale is always to start with a baseline. You want to administer a scale when you first meet your customer. And the reason that you want to do that is that you've got a starting place that then you're going to compare with it. If we're looking at impact, we want to see what was the impact of our services. And so we're going to identify the presenting situation that might help us figure out what the services are. And then we were going to do other assessments to see what kind of change were happening. So it's important to figure out how to administer those scales. And we want to have a standard process. We'll talk more about that in a minute here. And we you need to communicate with your customer when you're placing them on a scale, and this is at the family level. You can use scales at agency and community levels as well, but this is really a family level approach. Pedrob.
Yeah, I had a question, Barbara. So of course it's you need to administer an initial questionnaire about this before you start providing service. And it's kind of easier said than done. It sort of depends on the type of services you do. So we provide a lot of different services. So for example, somebody coming in for rental assistance and we've never seen them before, very first time we see them, now we're getting their situation as they first present themselves as a client. But we also run our Head Start programs, and so many people are already in the program. So we ask them a question about childcare. It's difficult because their childcare situation is actually pretty good because they're in our program. So we don't get anybody saying that they're in crisis or vulnerable because they're already starting out essentially as safe. So of course we're trying to get folks that first come to us before their child gets enrolled. But it's just tricky because if you decide you're going to start this tomorrow, well then anybody who's already your client, not that they don't count, and it's actually good information to know because it gives you kind of a status of where people are at. But it's just sort of easier said than done when you run ongoing programs where people have been coming to you for a while, because it doesn't really tell that story. So I guess I was wondering if there's, I wish
So
if we
that's the
could.
value of using something like a matrix where you have multiple scales, because you could have one scale that is about childcare in general for people that are not your customers in Head Start, and you
Yeah.
could have a scale beside it that would be a Head Start. So they might be a customer in Head Start, but maybe they're not attending regularly because they're having housing issues. So they might have stable childcare because they're in the program, but there might be some scaled differences that you could identify. So you would use either or of those two scales. And that's easier to do with software now than it ever used to be.
Okay.
So, that's one of those considerations is this idea of uh, standardizing your administration so that you can see various kinds of situations. And in your case, and this is really the first step, is to think, what is it that we need to score? If we're only scoring the housing situation, then that's easy, right? The housing people do it. But if you're looking at your agency customer and you're using a multiple scales side by side, and you need to know what you want to show. And then you could adjust your content to really reflect what it is you want to show. Um, and if everybody uses the same protocol in the same way, then you're able to be able to move forward. But it's really about content here. Let me scoot up here to this first couple steps on the steps on our process. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the clock saying, how could I have talked so already for 40 minutes? I can't, but we need more time. It's not going. So at any rate, let me hurry through this, and I'll get back, Rob, and I'll show you what I mean by using the different kind of content. So, when's the scale going to be administered at intake? But it might be different if you have different programs that are also going to be administering. So if housing is going to do it, and then you're going to hand it off to Head Start, or if Head Start's already done it. I mean, if the scale is used across the agency, then Head Start may have already scaled this family on all those other areas. And now, because they're in crisis, they're coming to the housing program with that particular scale flagged. But they've already got information about some of the other areas in the scale. So that's part of your protocols to determine how you're going to administer the scale. A very important part of a results-oriented management and accountability approach is knowing what's important to you to know in terms of this tool. So, and then you're going to make sure that everybody understands how to introduce this tool. Sometimes using a scale can be seen as embarrassing to people. If they see, oh, I'm in the way that I described my situation in housing or childcare or whatever, showing me that I'm vulnerable or I'm in crisis, and I really don't feel that way. So the staff really needs to understand how to introduce this to say these are a standard set of circumstances that are hierarchical in a way that help us see the relationship. So if you're at risk of eviction, you're not in as good a place as if you're not at risk of eviction. That's not as simple to explain if you don't have some training for your staff to be able to do that. So that's an important piece of the process so that you get honest responses from your customers. Because if you don't know them, then you might not know that they have child care situations or they have other situations. Um, and then you're going to talk about the benchmarks, not to say they've moved from below the prevention line to above it. We could talk more about this, but um, the 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 idea is that you want to think about the population that you want to scale, or what you want to do with your scale. If you're interested in creating a scale, this is where you want to start. What population is it? And and is it just the housing program? Are they the ones that are going to use the scale so they can show the relationship between the status and their service? Or are you going to do the whole agency? And then it'll matter if you're working with senior citizens or if you're working with families with young children. You'll be scaling different things. Um, and it could be driven by the service that you're trying to measure. That could be your driver. So, um, and then do you want to use this scale as an internal tracking tool, or do you want to use it to share information with others? Do you want to use it as a way of reporting? Very important to understand what your purpose is for creating this. And then one of the sort of the side values of using scales and matrices is that once you've got a series of these scales, you can aggregate them so that you can identify common needs. So if I have 50 customers that come in and they all have the same need, then I can say, well, that's something that's common in my community. And so it's something that we really have to understand more about. So let's do some more assessment. But it really helps you identify some common needs and barriers. So here's what I would say. Here are some steps to start to identify a scale. But Rob, for your situation, you might want to look at your scales and how you use them, using the same kind of set of steps. And you're going to determine a broad area. Do you want to just look at one thing, or do you want to look at well-being, which would look at using a series of scales? And then you don't want to do it alone, a single staff person creating a scale. But you have to identify the content and then create a scale and try it out and then use it and then see how much information you got. Was it useful? And Rob, that could be a little test for you to say, what do we need to know about childcare if we're giving emergency rent assistance? How much of that is important to us when we create this scale, and which kinds of questions do we want to ask, and where do we get those questions from? And so if you don't have scales, you want to start with some program that is important, that you have time to look into, that you can understand it. And this is one of those areas is you might bring in that whole fiscal concept with using the cost factor. So is the service, how much does the service cost to get to the outcome? What's the relationship? And if you can show on one of the scales that a service that costs less than $100, 100 to 101 to 500, up to several $1,000s on a scale. And how often are we using high cost strategies to move people from eviction to uh, stable housing? What is the cost? And you can use scales to help identify the range of the costs and the range of the frequency of the service and the outcome that it produced, and then look at those things together. But in order to do that, at the beginning, you have to think about what does the change that you want to measure look like. And and you want to keep this broad enough to show different levels of progress. And then you want to bring people together who have some knowledge in the topic area. So experts in the field, your customers, your friend AI that you're going to ask, what are some factors in this whole issue that we're going to talk about? What is the knowledge that we want to include? Um, and then you start to identify the content. So that's what we were doing in that little activity with the housing scale, is we were identifying what's the content that goes into those different benchmarks. What factors do we want to capture? And so, like when we think, like I said about the childcare issue, that because they're in our program, they have stable childcare. We know that's true. But what are the factors involved in rating and scaling that person's actual childcare needs? They're in our program, but our program goes 9 to 2, and the person works 9 to 5. And so that person now has a problem between 2 and 5. So even though they're in our program and have stable childcare, it's not sufficient to meet their needs. Or they don't attend, or the child has got medical barriers that doesn't allow them to attend, or what are the factors? I'm just throwing some ideas out here, but if you had the experts in the field, you had the subject matter experts, you had the participants, and you did some research on it, you would be able to say these are the kinds of factors, and here's the logically related changes that could be observed over time. So what would the ideal circumstance be? And we said in housing, it could be home ownership without a mortgage. It could be renting that's affordable in a place that we like. That's the top of our content. And then, so we could say, what's the top of our content about anything? Employment. You're employed, making a living wage. You're employed in a job that you like. Those are the kinds of factors. It's a job that's not too stressful, not far away from home. I mean, you start to say these are the factors. And like you say, I'm just throwing out some ideas of what factors might be in different domain areas. But when you create a scale, you really want to get down to what are the logically related changes that you could see as someone moves from in crisis through and up to thriving. And that's where that hierarchy of changes from the worst case to the best case comes about. And this is a draft. Remember, this is a draft. And then your first step really is to create this short-term scale that you're going to try out. You're going to draft the items. And here's one about a feeling of well-being. It could be just very easy to understand statements that are going to be part of your scale. And then you might score it the way we showed you on the housing scale, as a response, as a way for people to respond. And then you're going to set up your scoring system. Uh, and then you're going to try it out. You have to actually try your scale out, because while you're sitting in a room with your experts identifying all the factors that go into a scale, I can guarantee you that you've forgotten something or the wording that you used is not clear. And so maybe you didn't select the right questions. Maybe you have too many questions or not enough. Maybe there are things that you didn't think about that as you started to interview people using your scale, these other factors came up that you thought, oh, I really need to know more about that. Um, and then to just look at the standardization of the scoring. And then in the end, you use it, you review it, you refine it, and you can then you start to be able to feel confident that your scale is going to be valuable to you, and tell you whether you've got the information that you needed uh, to be more results oriented. So I think that might be, and we hear just a quick shot at what's a matrix. A matrix is a series of scales that are side by side. So here's a scale that has several different domains on it: income, employment, housing, education, transportation, and childcare. And each scale is a hierarchy, but the scales are also related. And you would be able to relate any number of different kinds of topic areas in your scale. You want to say, what is it that you want to know from your scale, and then be able to come back and figure out how to measure how to set your scale up. So, so that's a lot of information. I'm hoping that it gives you enough basics. And we lost. Did we lose Rob? I don't know, Rob, if I got you enough information for you to get started.
Yes, you
We
did.
can,
Thank you. Yeah, thank you,
okay,
Barbara. I appreciate it.
okay, yeah, and we could talk more. Certainly, you can always call me up, and well, we can talk more about, because you're actually using it. So you're at that stage 4 or 5 on those steps that I just gave, where you're looking at the use of the scale, you're looking at the data that you have, and you're saying,